Perhaps the secularized champions of organized labor, who dismiss the Quran as a book of guidance, would now begin to understand the reason why the labor force is daily being transformed into jackasses who sweat on behalf of the rich and the banks which they own. Muslims must also understand that riba is at work when wealth is sucked from the masses through legalized fraud involved in the use of artificial paper money. This money replaced the money that was the sunnah of every prophet of Allah Most High, that is, gold and silver and other precious metals. Artificial paper, plastic, and electronic money. Secular money has no intrinsic value. Rather, the value of the money is assigned to it, and then it constantly loses value over time, as the system was designed to make it happen. Banks are the major actors at work in forcing a decrease in the value of money, and banks make the most profit when such occurs. As money loses value, the value of everything is decreased. Prices rise, and wages lose value. Labor is then imprisoned in slave wages. The last revelation of the Quran. In the last revelation of the Quran, Allah Most Wise chose to return to a subject which had already been dealt with in earlier revelations in the Quran, as well as in the Torah, the Psalms, and the Gospel, namely the subject of the prohibition of riba. On the authority of a hadith, we know that the last revelation received by the blessed Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam shortly before his death was the passage in Surah Al-Baqarah 2:279-281 which dealt with riba. Umar ibn Khattab said, "The last verse to be revealed was on riba, but Allah's messenger was taken without having expounded it to us. So give up not only riba, but also riba, whatever raises doubts in the mind about its rightfulness." Sunan ibn Majah. Darimi. Ibn Abbas said, "O you who believe, fear Allah and give up what remains due to you from riba from now onwards, if you are indeed believers. And none shall be dealt with unjustly." Al-Baqarah 2:279-281. Ibn Abbas said, "This was the last verse revealed to the Prophet." Sahih Bukhari. That last revelation confirmed the Prophet's retroactive enforcement of the legislation prohibiting riba and the khutbah al-wida farewell sermon from Arafat. The last revelation is to be found in this passage from the Quran. We quote the entire passage with our own explanatory comments in small type. "Those who spend of their wealth by day and by night, secretly and openly, for such there will be reward with their Lord, nor will they have cause for fear, nor will they grieve. Provided that wealth is spent in a manner that is halal, such spending will stimulate the economy and put wealth into circulation. Those on the other hand who consume riba will not stand before Allah on the last day, except as though Satan drove them to madness. With his touch." This is because riba represents the opposite of spending, and riba wealth is sucked out of the economy until the masses are reduced to poverty and destitution. That is because they say business and riba are similar to each other. They argue that lending money on interest is a legitimate form of business. But Allah has permitted business and forbidden riba. Their argument is false. Allah has made business halal, but has made riba haram. And so riba is not a form of business. This is because the very essence of a legitimate business transaction is that it must admit of the possibility of either a profit or a loss. When money is lent on interest, the possibility of a loss is so minimized that it is almost eliminated. Hence, the lending of money on interest cannot qualify as a business transaction. And so, anyone who receives this warning from his Lord, and thereupon desists from riba may keep his past gains, the riba he previously accepted. And his affair rests with Allah. It will be for Allah to judge him. He will not be forced by the Islamic State to return the riba he had taken. But as for those who return to it, persist in riba, by way of lending money on interest, for example. After this revelation of the Quran, they are destined for the fire, therein to abide forever. And with this, Allah eradicates riba, whereas He blesses charitable deeds with manifold increase, because the essence of riba is to take, and to give nothing in return, while the essence of charity is to give, and take, nothing in return. And Allah does not love anyone who is stubbornly ingrate and who persists in sin, with particular reference to the sin of consuming riba. Verily, those who have attained to faith, and do good works, and are constant in prayer, and dispense charity, they shall have their reward from their Lord. And no fear need they have, and neither shall they grieve. O you who have attained to faith, fear Allah, and give up all the riba which is outstanding, which you still claim to be due to you if you are truly believers. If you do not do so, if you persist in lending money on interest even after declaring yourselves to be Muslims, then take notice of a declaration of war from Allah and His Messenger. Take notice that Muslims who abide by Islam would wage war against you for the liberation of all those who are oppressed because of riba. But if you turn away, if you give up riba, then you shall have, you will be entitled to reclaim only your principal sums, which you had lent on the basis of riba. That is, you may have only the principal sum, not the principal sum, plus a reasonable amount of interest, or not the principal sum, plus a service charge. Deal not unjustly, and you shall not be dealt with unjustly. This might more properly be translated as follows: in accepting the return of only the principal sum lent, you will spare yourself from the sin of being unjust to others, and in giving up the interest which was due to you, you will not, yourself, be subjected to any form of injustice. And if the debtor is in difficulty, grant him time until it is easy for him to repay. But if you remit it, if you write off the debt by way of charity, that will be best for you, if you only knew. And fear the day in which you, all of mankind including those who consume riba, will be brought back to Allah. Then every human being will receive what it earned, and none shall be wronged. Quran, Al-Baqarah, 2:274-281. Why did Allah, most wise, choose to send one more revelation shortly before the death of the Prophet, alayhi al-salam? Why did He choose a time that appears to have been the last possible time to send that revelation? Why did He do this after sending revelation in which He announced the perfection of din and the completion of His favor to the believers? There must surely be very important answers to all these questions. It appears to us that such a last revelation could only properly be used to reiterate something that lay at the very heart of the divine guidance. Additionally, it could be used to direct attention to that part of the divine guidance in which the faith of the believers would be most vulnerable to a future attack, the mother of all attacks by enemies of Islam. Finally, it may have come at the last, because it would assume a position of absolutely strategic importance in the last age, and Allah knows best. The choice of the subject of riba as the last revelation appears to constitute the most dire of all warnings that riba can pose the gravest of all threats to the faith, freedom, and power of the believers. This subject is of supreme importance, for herein lies the potential for the most dangerous, destructive, and devastating attack on the faith of the believers and the integrity and power of the Ummah of the Prophet, alayhi al-salam. The Prophet confirms the greatest danger of riba. This opinion of ours appears to be confirmed by the fact that the Prophet, alayhi al-salam, himself prophesied, in a hadith received from Abu Hurairah, the eventual total success of precisely such an attack, launched through riba. It would be an attack launched obviously by enemies of Islam, but it would penetrate all of mankind, including the followers of Prophet Muhammad, alayhi al-salam. There will come a time, said the Prophet, when you will not be able to find a single person in all of mankind who will not be consuming riba. And if anyone claims that he is not consuming riba, then surely the vapor of riba will reach him. According to another text, the dust of riba will reach him. Sunan Abu Dawud. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam thus made it abundantly clear that the greatest danger to the integrity of the Ummah and of the Iman faith of the believers would come from riba. This confirmed the warning from Allah Most High Himself that was manifested in the choice of riba as the subject of the last revelation. The prophecy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam concerning the universal prevalence of riba has today been fulfilled. Indeed, it has been fulfilled in our own miserable lifetime. Specifically, it has been fulfilled during the time that has elapsed since the Ottoman Caliphate was abolished in 1924. Up to 1924, the riba-based capitalist European economy could not succeed in penetrating the economy and the market of the Muslim world. But Europe did succeed in enticing the governments that presided over the affairs of Muslims to enter into riba. The Ottoman Caliph, for example, had borrowed considerable sums of money on interest from Europe. His financial and economic difficulties grew to such an extent that he was forced, as a desperate means of preventing the collapse of the empire, to seek membership in the new European secular state system. He achieved this in the Paris Peace Agreement of 1856. But the price he had to pay was to succumb to European or Jewish financial blackmail that extracted from him the abolition of jizya and al-dhimma in all the territories of the Ottoman Empire. This was also a quid pro quo for debt and interest payment relief. In doing so, the Caliph betrayed Allah Most High, who had himself established the jizya tax in the Quran al-Tawbah 929. The success of Euro-Jewish bankers in targeting the Ottoman Caliph was a classic example of the financial imperialism which is made possible through riba. Henry Kissinger was the author of the same strategy that eventually led to the collapse of a superpower in modern times, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics USSR. That event should have opened the eyes of the ulama of Islam. It did not. As a consequence, the same strategy continues to be pursued by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and by so many others. Not only is Israel's economy based on riba, but Israel is also embracing Arafat's PLO and other Arab regimes, with precisely the same deadly economic embrace, which reduces the target of the embrace to poverty, destitution, and economic slavery. The success of European or Jewish financial blackmail witnessed the beginning of the dismantling of the sacred model of a public order in the world of Islam, Dar el-Islam, and of its replacement with the secular European model. In that model of a state, sovereignty was taken away from Allah Most High and was located, instead, in the state. That was an act of shirk. Indeed, since 1924, riba has penetrated the total economic life of Muslims all around the world. The financial imperialism inherent in riba has delivered the entire world of Islam by its very throat into the hands of enemies with sharpened knives. Indeed, all of mankind is now trapped in the worlds of riba and shirk. Not only has the prophecy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam been fulfilled through the total victory of riba-based banking all over the world, and through the riba that is inherent in non-redeemable artificial money, but it has also been fulfilled in the total corruption of the free and fair market. And through the riba that is inherent in non-redeemable artificial money, but it has also been fulfilled in the total corruption of the free and fair market. Today's so-called free market is, in fact, a den of thieves, in which the strong exploit the weak. Finally, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself echoed the extreme gravity and dire warning in the Quranic revelation by using the strongest possible language in connection with riba. Abu Hurairah said that the Messenger of Allah said, "Riba is of 70 different parts, the least dangerous being equivalent to a man marrying having sexual intercourse with his own mother." Sunan ibn Majah. Bayhaqi. Abdullah ibn Hanzala reported that the Messenger of Allah said, "A dirham silver coin of riba, which a man receives knowingly, is worse than committing adultery 36 times. Ahmad. Bayhaqi transmitted it, on the authority of Ibn Abbas with the addition that the Prophet continued to say, "Hell is more fitting for him whose flesh is nourished by what is haram." Abu Hurairah reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "On the night I was taken up to heaven, came upon people whose bellies were like houses, which contained snakes which could be seen from outside their bellies. I asked Gabriel who they were, and he told me that they were people who had consumed riba." Musnad Ahmad. Sunan ibn Majah. Abu Hurairah reported that the Prophet said, "Allah would be justified in not allowing 4 persons to enter paradise or to taste its blessings: he who drinks habitually drinks alcohol, he who takes riba, he who usurps an orphan's property without right, and he who is unmindful to his parents. Mustadrak, al-Hakim, Kitab al-Buyu. The Prophet alayhi al-Salam also reaffirmed the declaration of war from Allah and his messenger in connection with the prohibition of riba in the following hadith. Jabir ibn Abdullah Ra said, I heard the messenger of Allah say, if any one of you does not leave Mukabara, he should take notice of war from Allah and his messenger. Zayd ibn Thabit said, I asked, what is Makabara? He replied, that you have the land for cultivation for a half, a third, or a quarter of the produce. The danger here is that it leads deceptively to slave labor. Sunan, Abu Dawud. It should be clear from the material presented above that the establishment of an economy based on riba is a very great sin indeed.